Hey everyone, Burt Copeland with New Life CFO Services. Hope y'all are having a great day. Today I have my good friend Clark Sandlin here, and Clark is with Zyrka.
Mm-hmm.
And did I get the whole name? Zyrka? Or?
Yeah, it's just Zyrka.
Okay, Zyrka. And they do technology, and they do it very, very well, from back office technology to security and everything else. So we thought it'd be really interesting to sit down and have a conversation about various topics, being security, fraud prevention, systems evaluations, because we bump into each other all the time, and we've been friends for what, 7, 8 years now?
Yeah, about 8 years.
Yeah, kind of scary really. But but anyways, we were having a great conversation the other day on the phone. It's like, oh my gosh, we need to just do this and share it, because we certainly enjoy each other's company, and we hope that you're going to enjoy this video too. Now, Clark, one of the things for us is really diving into fraud prevention.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because there are all kinds of scary stories in the news. And,
yes.
You know, you mentioned a few, and those are...
yeah, like Colonial Pipeline and the Kaseya hack recently, the meat processing plant that was hacked. I mean, it's all the ransomware type events.
Right.
People trying to get get Bitcoin, make a lot of money off of this, and
right.
There's so many challenges, and it's coming from all different angles. You've got phishing over here, you've got ransomware over here, and
it's just a flood of attacks.
And who knows what's on the horizon?
It almost seems like there's barbarians just coming over the wall.
That's
everywhere.
Right. Yeah. The Huns are coming over, and
yeah. It doesn't feel all that comforting.
No.
Because on our side we see where the CEOs. All that email scam that you hear about, and it's unreal what goes on there.
Yeah, but the thing is like, there's a lot of people taking advantage of this as well, and they're just trying to sell every single cybersecurity product out in the market. And I understand CEOs and CFOs are kind of in this position of, well, we have to manage IT, but we don't know technology, so we don't understand it. So yeah, let's buy some of that cybersecurity. Can I just push a button and buy that?
Boy, you just nailed me.
Yeah, but so many people are in that place, and it's unfortunate because you don't really need to overspend and spend so much money. Where you really need to spend your time is on the best practices of your internal IT department,
and that's where it's very similar to like on the financial side as well.
Exactly.
If you're just doing the basics, it's amazing how little fraud that you come across.
Right.
And for us, and we'll come back to both the email scams that we both see, and then I want to get back into some of the hacking and the ransomware. So we're going to kind of go through those stuff. But if you don't mind, I'll talk about just some of the basics on the financial side.
No, absolutely, please.
What's stunning to me is when we're dealing with companies, they just assume everything's okay, and assuming, we all know what that means. Going to make an ass out of me and you.
Yeah.
Or you and me. Let's get the deal
right. Right.
But either way, it's not good. And what I always tell people, it's like, you need to know enough about the controls to prevent fraud, so that at the very least you look like you're trying to control fraud.
Mm-hmm.
So the analogy that I always come up with is the most effective thing in your home security system is the sign out in the front yard.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So if it just appears that you have a security system, most of the threats are going to go away.
Right.
In my house, I hate to get it away, it's a couple of dogs that bark really loud.
Yeah, right.
But it's also the same thing holds true with inside your company. The appearance of controls is almost as effective as the controls themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So like cash, gosh, we all hate losing cash. And just little simple things of like the business owner and certainly the controller, the CFO, asking to see the reconciliations.
Mm-hmm.
Now the CEO may not have any clue
right
about the reconciliation,
or
asking to see the bank statements and seeing all the activity. But the mere inquiry and asking for that stuff will send up all the right signals about, oh my gosh, somebody's looking.
Yes.
And the appearance of looking stops a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the other things that we see, and I know that you have some thoughts about, ultimately, Clark and I were talking about some of the things that I see, and he immediately leaned in and goes, there's ways to automate that. So that's going to be a really interesting part of this too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So, it's like things that we see that we talk about all the time. The most common areas of fraud, other than that email scam that we're going to get into, is, people creating fake vendors. So, what's going on with your vendors? And then, you create a fake vendor, and then suddenly all kinds of fake invoices start coming in.
Right.
And they're not big amounts to the company, but they are certainly interesting amounts to the individual
Sure.
that's
Sure.
sending those things in.
Sure.
And it's stunning how much money can flow out of a company through fake vendors.
Yeah.
You know, in my previous company, which is in construction that you're aware of, we literally had one of our project managers that went to one of our subcontractors and was telling them, I need you to send me fake change orders.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
Wow.
And then he was reaching out to the subcontractor saying, and here's the gig. You're going to send me fake change orders that I'm going to approve and put into the project. I'm going to pay you, and we're going to split that money 50-50.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Wow.
Now that one's unreal because it's collusion.
Yes.
And most people stop when somebody else has to be involved.
Right. Right.
So that's really, and then the other area that's really interesting is fake employees, fake hours.
Yeah.
Because those are the things that we
Yeah.
can get in there and manipulate pretty readily.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, what I recommend, because I'm not the technology guru or
Mm-hmm.
whatever,
Yeah.
is that, you know, I want my business owners to run a list of all their vendors they've paid over the last quarter, last year,
Mm-hmm.
and I want you to look at that list and says, who's
Yes.
on here that I don't know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then go back to your heads of departments. Who's on here that you don't know? And
Yeah.
why are we using X, Y, and Z? What is this really about?
Right. It's kind of like when you're looking at your credit card statement and you've got that
Great
$4
analogy.
here, $7 here, even though it's just a little bit, if it's going on for an entire year and somebody's fished you and gotten your credit card information and they're just sipping money out, that's going to add up. And if,
Oh, yeah.
if it's, you know, multiple counts of that. But I agree with you, you know, kind of like in physics, you know, if something is observed, it behaves differently, right? In quantum theory, right? So I agree with that 100%. It's the same on the technology side. If you are watching, just checking in, even if you don't know what you're talking about, if you can fake it till you make it, go, you know, the CFO comes in and says, hey, I want to see what our backup reports look like. Then you got all the IT guys scrambling. Oh, we gotta go get the backups.
Get the backup,
yeah,
baby.
so it's the same on the technology side too, and that's a very good point that you brought up because it is just a simple little act that will spawn all this work and attention to what you really need to be focusing on your business.
Yeah, one of the things that we do with our clients when these questions come up is we literally will give them a hit list of here's questions you need to ask.
Yeah.
You'll appear smart even if you are unaware. I don't want to call them stupid because they are our clients, but you know, just asking these questions will have everybody's radar screen up and lively with all kind of pings on it that
Right.
people are looking. You know, the other thing that I think is really interesting is what most people don't realize is that fraud internally inside your company, not external, is normally committed 90% of the time by people you'd never expect to commit fraud or never have an intention to commit fraud.
Mm-hmm. We see that on the technology side.
Oh, do you?
Because we're observing that part, right?
Yeah, because I'm always thinking of some wicked enemy across the ocean.
Yeah, the Russians or whoever, right?
That's my stereotype right or wrong, so I apologize to all my Russian friends.
Well, we were raised in the Cold War era, right? So
get under your desk.
And it's funny, I've got a friend in Russia that I talk to quite regularly. He's like, what is all this nonsense? We're just over here just like you guys trying to make a living. So.
But, you know, with that, when you think through these people, you know, the ones inside your company, it's usually people that had some personal compelling need for financial inputs. And they literally almost stumble across an opportunity. And then because nobody asks, inquires, checks, or whatever, they're like, oh my gosh, who knew that this kind of thing was available, that I could do this? And they usually rationalize it.
Yes.
And I'm horrible at rationalization. I mean, I could rationalize everything, all my actions. And that's not a good thing.
Most humans are,
right?
Okay, good.
But then they'll rationalize it going, I'm just going to borrow from the company.
Yeah.
But because that underlying financial need is never resolved, they can borrow more and more and more.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had people, I got called one time to a pawn shop. And the pawn shop owner says, hey, this is XYZ pawn shop, and you need to get here as fast as possible because I'm looking at 5 of your laptops.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like, really? What is
Yeah.
It's like, well, the guy, I think one of your employees is here trying to sell me your laptops, and I can only stall him for so long before he gets really curious about what I'm doing.
Wow.
Oh, it was crazy. And sure enough, I had to walk in, and there's my employee with all the laptops, and It's like, man, I'm sorry, but I got to fire you right now.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a
That's
tough
unfortunate.
day.
Yeah.
And for him, he had a gambling problem.
Mm.
And another situation where a guy had a drug problem. So it ends up being, things as heinous as, drugs, alcohol, gambling, prostitution, pornography, and even simple things like my kids going to school.
Yeah.
I have, healthcare costs that are spiraling out of control, went through a divorce. Those are things that we need to be sensitive about.
Exactly.
When they start happening, not that you're going to know about drugs, but you can see signals of other things.
Sure. So it's interesting you bring that up because, we get a lot of pushback from CEOs and CFOs and owners of companies and decision makers. We don't want to monitor our employees. We trust our employees. We don't want to send that signal, send that message. But we always say, look, you just monitor, get alerted, because what we see on our side is employees taking data just wholesale. Okay, I'm about to leave and go to this other company, but I want all these forms that I created here. I want all this sensitive information.
Right.
I may be taking clients.
I think it's their IP versus the company's.
Exactly. And what you see is that big data dump down to a USB drive.
Oh gosh.
And then at least get alerted to it. At least be able to have that conversation. And again, it kind of goes back to the monitoring. And you can do the same with every piece of data on your network.
Well, and you touched on the human side of it, which I think is important, because I want to treat you like I want to be treated, right?
Right.
Which is,
yeah, absolutely.
Irrespective of the demons that we try and tee up for most entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Most entrepreneurs really want to take care of their people.
Yes.
And so as we tee up the human side of this, it's like, okay, if I see behavioral things going on with Clark, well, it's kind of my responsibility to make sure Clark's okay.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I'd much rather have a conversation with Clark. Do you need like a bridge loan? Do you need some help? How can we help you solve this problem? Versus ignoring the fact that you went through maybe an expensive divorce, or your parents are in, they're in the hospital in really expensive care.
Mm-hmm.
Those things we might be able to solve together. The other human side of this that I think people miss is everybody else in the company.
Yes.
So as a steward, as the head of the company, you're a steward or a shepherd of everybody in the flock. Well, that's the analogy I'm going with.
Exactly, yeah.
And if I don't address the obvious problems, then I'm really making them more vulnerable for their jobs.
Right. Yeah.
So if I get hacked, or whatever the case may be, and the whole company blows up, or I don't control my vendors or my payroll, or controls over cash, whatever the case may be, then I'm really making everybody else in the company more vulnerable for their jobs.
Right.
Now, everybody's at risk because I'm unwilling to have one uncomfortable conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, agreed. And there's also a lot of projection going on there, I think. Because CEOs and owners of companies rise to that level because they've done the hard work, not only on themselves, but also, personally and professionally. And we tend to project onto other people our own values, right? Okay, well, I'm a Christian. I have these beliefs. I believe in being honest and having integrity, and we project that onto our employees. But we don't always know where they're at unless we're checking in with them, unless we're monitoring what's going on. And we've had a lot of requests lately from clients, especially with the work from home. They wanted to monitor more and more people as far as what they're doing. What are they spending most of their time on? And what we're finding is some very interesting, Netflix rolling, all day long, and those kind of things. So, I think they all have these kind of suspicions, and you would never suspect an employee would do that because you wouldn't do that. So we're projecting onto them, but you work just as hard as I do. It's always a good thing to kind of do a temperature check, kind of check your environment. And I'm not that I'm condoning monitoring everybody, because I'm definitely the opposite of that, but I'm a very freedom-loving, non-control kind of person. But, you also need to make sure that the people that you have working for you are honest, just like you are, instead of you projecting onto them.
Yeah, because frequently when people hear geeks like us talk, and there's like, oh my gosh, it's George Orwell in 1984.
Yes.
It's like, no, that's not what we're talking about.
Right, yeah.
But there is a responsibility of safeguarding your assets, means that we're also safeguarding the engagement of people with those assets.
Right.
I'd like to kind of shift over to some of the technology side of that. But before we do that, why don't you tell everybody more about what you do what
Okay.
Zyrka does. A lot of the folks have heard a lot about New Life, and they probably had their fill on that.
Yeah.
But love to have you explain more what you do, because I think it'll add into the rest of this conversation.
Yeah, sure. So we're a managed IT service provider for private equity, hedge funds, and family offices. We've been in business for 17 years. I started with the PE firm Hicks, Muse, Tate and First, which was Tom Hicks, and they eventually split up. And they came to me, approached me, asked me to create a company that eventually would support all of those partners as they went on in different directions. And organically, we've grown to a lot of other private equity groups, hedge funds, family offices. So that's where we specialize in compliance and our technology side. So we really, anything that plugs in the wall, we support. We're a generalist as far as technology goes, but we're very specific with the PE side and compliance, mostly from a registered investment advisor. So we also know everything from technology as far as back-end support, server support, cloud services. We do the help desk support 24/7, high concierge service. We're very responsive, and we're getting into a lot of new things like workflow, programming, and automation.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So like in my old days where I had a big server that was in a closet that I tried not to go in the closet.
Right.
I had people that helped me out with break fix.
Yeah.
Plug and play that I'd call it. A new employee walks in, they need to be optimal. And then making sure that all the computers and systems are working well. So your managed services covers all that and the security of the systems, correct?
Correct, yeah. So we do a lot of cybersecurity. Obviously, in the past 5 years, it's become just a big thing. And my approach is keep it simple. Don't overspend on cybersecurity. You really can kind of need to focus on processes and procedures more than actually what the latest new application is or
Very nice.
the latest cybersecurity application is.
Yeah, I'll tell you, because I'm not a technology whiz, you described me perfectly when you said, that CFO just wants to hit a button and make it all go away.
Yeah.
Because there's 1,000 applications, software, techniques that are really all being sold on fear, is
Correct.
my perception.
Yeah. A lot of it is fear-based. And people are taking advantage of that just because they know that the person on the other end of the table does not know technology. And, it's unfortunate, again, going back to the kind of the projection thing, you think everyone is, good, kind-hearted,
Same values as you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I run into a lot of salespeople who I get brought into conversations with, and I turn back to the CEO and say, why do you need this product? They say, well, because we need that cybersecurity. Well, what need is this filling that you don't have today? And what need are you trying to fill? And most of the responses I get is, well, we don't want to be the next Colonial Pipeline.
Oh yeah, dive into that one.
Yeah, so it's my response back is, well, what happened with Colonial Pipeline? Why did they get hacked? Why were they down for weeks? What was the problem there? Well, I don't really know the story. I know the Russians got in, ransomed them for Bitcoin, and then the FBI took away some Bitcoin, and so they don't really know what happened. And what really happened is the question that the media doesn't ask, that no one asks, is, the Colonial Pipeline CEO even came out and he said, look, we've got to be more firm with the Russians. We've got putting it on, we've got to go and attack them, or to, build up our infrastructure. Our infrastructure's weak. We need to get the government involved. We need to get the private sector involved. Everybody needs to deal with this problem. Instead of talking about the elephant in the room.
So what's the elephant in your opinion?
Where's the backup? Where was the backup? So, and we found this in oil and gas. This is pretty across the line. We've done a lot of due diligence for some oil and gas companies that people are looking to buy. And we go in and we see the same thing happen over and over again. They have backups, but they're in band, which means it's on the same network. So if your network is compromised, they're sitting there deleting your backup, and then they're going to get you when all the backups are gone. So
wow, that's scary.
Yeah.
That they're actually deleting your backup.
So you need a backup that's in the cloud, completely off your network, And that's a question all CEOs need to be asking, or CFOs need to be asking. Is our network in the cloud or somewhere off the network, out of band? Out of band is the terminology.
So let me throw this down to my level.
Yeah.
Just make sure that I'm getting what you're saying.
Sure.
So if I'm, your average mid-market CEO, really if I have a well-orchestrated backup that is remote, off-site, web-enabled, whatever, and I get hacked and somebody calls me for ransom, are you telling me that I just need to
restore and get back up and running?
Maybe throw some new hardware at it because they may have corrupted the hardware, but load that in and I'm back up and go in 24 hours?
That's right.
Wow.
That's
like
simple.
A very easy solution.
It is. And in the Colonial Pipeline situation, that could have happened. And the technology is there where we can just clone servers all day long and have copies of them. Clone a server, kick it out to the cloud, and have real-time hour copies of every single server you have on your network.
So if they hacked my server, are they also hacking the conduit into the cloud backup?
No, because that's a separate encrypted vault somewhere else. So what happens is, in these hacks, in the Colonial Pipeline hack, what happens is they send out a phishing email, or someone clicks on something, then they get in, or they find a vulnerability, because we've seen some vulnerabilities that were taken advantage of with software not being updated, which is another thing. You need to make sure everything is updated. So they find a way into your network, and what they're doing is they're sitting there figuring out, okay, where are their backups? Where's all their data? Where's the sensitive data? They'll just sit there for weeks and weeks and months and months. In the Chinese case, sometimes they sit there for 6 months, and then they got you. So what happens is they sit there, like I said, delete the backups that you have if they're on the same network. If they're in the cloud, they can't get access to it because it's a totally different network. And it's a totally different login, and it's a total different encryption system. Now, if they compromise the administrator's password and got the backup, then that's another thing. But
I'm sure that's
it's very rare, and most administrators have two-factor authentication, and it's just a complex problem. Hard to do.
That's great news.
Yeah.
It's actually that straightforward to secure your data in the system, and you could literally laugh at the hackers.
Yeah.
One thing that's stunning to me, you mentioned phishing just a little bit ago.
Yeah.
It is stunning to me how many BS emails I get.
Yeah.
With some file attached, or here's some voice recording, or something, and it's like, oh my gosh, do people not know not to click on this stuff?
No, they don't.
That's stunning.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who, and you can't really blame the people. I mean, we're all busy. We all get into those modes where, okay, I didn't get enough sleep last night, and you make just crummy decisions sometimes. I mean, it happens. It's human. I always try and look at it from their perspective. Yeah, you would think in this day and age, most people would know not to click on things, but things happen. If you get an email from your CEO, they want to respond real quick. They want to show that they're on top of the ball. Yeah, but what happens is they click on, oh, great, now I've messed up our network. So,
well, and maybe you could help people just describe or help them understand what to look for in an email that makes it look weird, and that you need to flag it as junk, phishing, or whatever, because you have those options.
Yeah.
And I assume that once you flag it for phishing or whatever, that you think it's phishing, that sender is forever treated differently in your rules?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, they usually buy domains similar to what you have, your email domain, either take off a letter or replace a letter, and that's happened so many times. It's really, going back to being tired and things like that, it's really about being present. And I don't want to get all zen and yogi on you, but it's kind of like, stop. You don't need to respond so quickly. Anytime anybody pressures you or says something is urgent in an email, that's when you go, okay, wait a minute, this is my CEO. If this is that urgent, I'm gonna walk down the hall, or I'm gonna hop on Zoom or give them a call and just say, hey, what's up? I got this message. It's urgent. So be more mindful of that process of what's going on. So I'm taking everybody back to the basics, right? You can buy all the phishing software that you want. You can buy all the cybersecurity things that you want. Things are still going to get through. I mean, people always figure out a way. The Nigerians are so good at figuring out a way to get in. So, to me, it's just back to the simple process of, is it really that urgent? Question that. So, if your IT department's saying, hey, I really need your password because we have to, that old ploy, or they're calling and trying to get your password, just stop, walk away and say, you know what, let me get clearance on this and, let me get back to you. Because I have other things I'm working on right now that are much more urgent than that.
And one thing that I learned from you, because we've talked about this before, is anytime now that I see an email that just doesn't seem 100% kosher, I go up and I click on the sender's name and look at the actual address.
Yes.
And I'm looking for the weird stuff on the back end. Like it says Bank of America, and then it says, some other weird stuff.
Yeah.
Or you taught me about looking at the name, and I've even seen things from someone at New Life. It's the administrator at New Life, which I don't have.
Right.
So
yeah, exactly.
I knew that was weird.
Yeah.
And so I clicked on that and opened it up, and the domain name was changed just a little bit.
Right.
So instead of Life, it was like a large L and a small L.
Yeah.
So it looked just like Life. Or
sometimes it's a L and a 1.
Oh, yeah.
FE, yeah. So that happens too. There's and a lot of it is either in the web link down below, like it's an Amazon delivery. Hey, we're having problems delivering this to you. You get tired. If you're expecting a delivery, most people are expecting deliveries from Amazon. They're just going to go ahead and click on it.
Yeah.
Well, be very cognizant of what you're doing, and if you hover over some of those, you kind of see, okay, it's not giving you Amazon, it's giving you AMZON, so it's just a matter of slowing down.
If only this creativity could be put to a productive use.
No kidding, yeah.
Yes,
but there's a lot of money in it, so
yeah. The last topic that I want to hit on here before we kind of go over into system selection, which is like our last topic. We unfortunately have seen these email scams. And so it kind of falls in between normal controls, financial controls, and IT controls, where somebody sent in a fake email, somebody's clicked on it, and it's going in there and just reading the email systems for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
And then it finds who's the controller, who's the people asking for authorization, who's the people that are executing the transaction, and lo and behold, now comes this fake email from the CEO with some urgent demand of we need to wire money to here, and here, ASAP. Sometimes it's to an outside vendor, theoretically.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the CEO demanding I'm getting ready to close on a beach house. I need you to wire money here.
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
And it's stunning to me how frequently that happens, and people don't walk down the hall and ask.
Yes.
We had one company that we ran across. And it was several $100,000 that got sucked out. And it was only on the third draw that the guy that was executing the transaction finally called the CEO.
Yeah.
And says, what's going on? And it's like, and then it really blew up.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, then the CEO finds out $200,000 has already gone out of the company and another $150,000 was being requested. And they're like, oh my God.
Well, you have to remember, these people are sitting, once they've compromised your network, they're just sitting there waiting for the best opportunity. So what they're doing is, let's say they're targeting the CFO because the CFO controls the wires. Well, they're going to wait until he's up in the air somewhere, traveling. They're going to look at his calendar, and then that's when they're going to send the request.
It's actually that sophisticated?
Yes. Well,
wow.
Once they compromise the network, they have access to your calendar.
Makes perfect sense.
They have access to your emails, so they start to monitor your behavior, they start to monitor your language, how do you request wires, and then they're going to collect all that information and go, okay, here's how he normally requests wires, or she, or here's how they usually talk in emails. So they're getting much better and targeted at that. And guess what? She's flying to New York, so she'll be in the air for 4 hours, and this is the perfect time to send that request.
Oh, gosh. I don't know if you gave me more comfort or more concern.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was quite that slick.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Clark. I gotta go.
Right.
I gotta go resecure all my bank accounts. But
going back to what you said, it's really just kind of like, stop, go ask the CFO, did you really want to send this? I'm just checking. And you know what? That communicates to the CFO, hey, I'm looking out for you. And the CFO's, no CFO should be saying, stop bothering me. That's not going to happen.
No. And if
They're
you're
going to be thankful
to be
that
the bearer of bad news, you're probably in the wrong job.
That's right. That's right.
Because of the controller and CFO, you're going to have bad news run across your desk. So just,
Yeah. So back to the basics. Just basic communication.
Right.
It's not a technology. That's not a technology you install. And you've just solved a problem. So, I may seem like a neo-Luddite sometimes, but...
A neo-Luddite?
A neo-Luddite, someone who's anti-technology.
Oh, okay. Well, that'd be
me. But I look at it as, what is this solving here? Are you really solving 100% of the problem? And if not, do you really need that technology? And that's why I'm saying there's so many phishing software out there to protect, to try and protect you from bad domains and things like that. But they don't catch everything. And if one thing gets through, that's a problem, because it also lulls you into a false sense of security. Like, oh, my firewall's got this, or my phishing blocker has all this. Oh, here's an email. Click. So really have a mindful approach to what you're doing from a technology perspective, and that needs to be a dialogue as well with whoever your technology provider is.
So let me ask you a question. You've said several times in our lovely little chat here about, sometimes simple is better.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you been brought into a conversation where you think that the company is being oversold on the solution?
Almost, I would say 90% of the time. Especially the larger companies get, they are being oversold.
Is that just the thing, nobody at IBM ever gets fired, or nobody ever gets fired for picking IBM back in the 60s and 70s, kind of the thing of, I'll never get fired if I'm overprotected?
So,
or just
I think that is part of the case. You have to look at the big picture of how this grows, right? So, who is in the IT positions today, as far as CIO or CTO or whoever? Those people were great at the help desk in the 90s, and they worked their way up. Wasn't necessarily that they are visionaries or that they have a good business sense or they understand business. So this is where the real huge disconnect that I see. You've got a great IT person, not a good manager, not an effective manager. Does not get the business purpose, does not understand business, budgets, financial aspects of their business. They just like, we're just going to throw this in here. We need that. We need this. And it's kind of like a kid in a candy shop. So they just start throwing things in because, hey, I read about this. This solves our cybersecurity problems, and this solves our server problems. And they just start throwing things at it, which they understand the technology, but they don't understand the business behind it. So what happens is if you have a CEO or CFO who's unfortunately inherited the position of IT director and is managing this mess, just check in and kind of mentor and explain from your side, going back to the basics again. Have that cross dialogue, have that communication, and question. I mean, I'm always about being very Socratic about everything. Why do we need this? Explain to me why we need this. Help me understand why we need to spend $50,000 on this device.
My if then?
Yeah, exactly. And then if you see that they can't really give you a reason, if their reason is, well, cybersecurity is a big problem, and this is our chosen solution. Well,
when you talk through that, you reminded me of a situation with my grandfather a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
He was aging. He was a great dude, everything else, but as he aged, doctors kept on recommending all these different drugs.
Yeah.
And the drugs actually ended up creating more problems because they didn't work well together. Mm-hmm. And once they unplugged some of his drugs, he was back to being ball.
Very good analogy.
Is it the same analogy for the technology being dumped in?
Absolutely. When we walk in, so we work with a lot of private equity companies, and we're brought in on some due diligence deals of they're looking to buy this company and they want to see what the problems are. Well, 9 times out of 10, it's IT management. It's a disconnect in communication between real management and IT management. Not that IT management is not real, but they don't have the experience. They're great at technology, but they don't understand running a business.
Makes perfect sense.
Big missing piece there.
Yep.
But if you all come together and have that communication, so that what happens is they build these huge infrastructures that have this recurring payments year after year and bloated budgets, when you can just simplify, and if you hire to what you need to do the processes, to check your backups, to do the diligence, to check the event logs, all the boring stuff, right? The fun stuff is buying all the cool toys and playing with them, but at the end of the day,
everybody wants to talk about their cool toys at cocktail hour. They don't talk about their boring stuff.
That's right. Oh, we got this great process for checking backups all day long.
Versus, we just walk down the hall and make sure it's really approved.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
That's not a good cocktail conversation.
No, it's not at all. But that, at the end of the day, is what gets things done. And that's what will prevent colonial pipelines every day.
The last topic that I want to really go over with you, and I'll tell you, one of the things that I love about Clark, he's very direct. If he's thinking it, it's coming out. So that's why I love to talk about stuff, because he and I have been in several meetings before, and he just called people on the carpet. It was great to see, and it was almost funny. You hate to start laughing in those kind of meetings, but with that said, let's shift over into technology selection. Mm-hmm. Wait, hold on. I want to go back one deal.
Okay.
To all this proliferation of technology and the bloated budgets that just grow and grow and grow.
Mm-hmm.
So when that happens, I'm guessing that there's a lot of times relative to your services, you can work in there and go, we could do this and save you money.
Correct.
Is that true?
That is.
Of the time?
I would say that's true 100% of the time.
Wow. I just wanted to tee that up because I think the world of him. And I'm not trying to do the Clark sales pitch.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
But we've worked on some clients together, and I think it's always stunning about the financial impact, because a lot of people look at it as like, oh, we're going to add services, we're going to add this. Like, well, it may be subtraction by addition.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think that's a really important concept.
Yes.
Which, now that comes out of my mouth, creates a great segue to our final.
Yes. So, but also, you reminded me of something else as well, is that, the other thing is if you don't have someone who is in charge of your IT, what ends up happening, and we've walked into a lot of environments where this has happened, your employees take over. Oh, I need this application. Oh, I need this. I'm going to download this and pay for this. So it's death by 1,000 needles, right? All of a sudden you have 40 to 70 applications you're paying for on a monthly basis.
Oh my gosh.
And your marketing team doesn't want to use the same app that the CFO wants to use, and you end up having, okay, we've paid for this huge ERP system, but everybody's they're siloed their information off in different applications. And we see that all the time. And our biggest challenge now is going into those environments and saying, look, you're paying this much for this ERP application, why aren't you using it? And it's because, well, our sales team prefers this over Salesforce, or so on. Everybody has their application that they want, and there's not a strong person stepping in and saying, nope, we have to consolidate, and I'm sorry you like this application, but we're paying this much for this.
Oh yeah,
and
those are big numbers.
You can shrink all that. I think when I walk into a company, immediately I see so many subscriptions to, what is this? I start asking, why is this? And then they go, I don't know. Well, you're paying, hundreds of dollars on this on a monthly basis, and
over hundreds of employees, and
yeah,
it's it is
so
death by 1,000 cuts.
What is this application? Well, I don't know. Joe Blow signed up for this. Well, he's not even here anymore. Oh, okay. It's that kind of thing. It's just no one is minding the shop.
That's crazy. Yeah, we see the same thing sometimes on total ERP systems,
yeah.
which is where I really wanted to shift to. For
yeah, sure. Yeah.
The analogy that I always use, or the metaphor, is, are you sure you want to buy a Rolls Royce when you just need a bicycle?
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yes.
And it's stunning to me. Sometimes we'll walk in there, and people, because I love dashboards,
mm-hmm.
I'm kind of an analytical geek. I love that stuff.
Who doesn't?
Numbers just dance in my head that way.
Yeah.
And I walk in there, and people love our dashboards. Oh, we need to set those things up. It's like, well, you realize you have them. What? Yeah, you have all those applications on your system. You just never set them up. Because they
Right.
get sold these systems that can do
Yeah.
incredible things
Yeah.
for things they never use.
Exactly.
And it's stunning to me. So how often do you see that people are over-systemed?
Again, 100% of the time. I mean,
Oh my
every
gosh.
time we walk in somewhere, there's always something you can do to cut costs and not harm productivity.
I've always thought that ERP salespeople might be some of the best salespeople
Yes.
in
Great.
the world.
Yeah.
And they are very good. So I mean that as a compliment. It may have
Yeah.
sounded like a backhanded compliment,
Oh, yeah.
but they're very good.
Yeah.
And they know that they're selling to an ignorant audience.
Yes.
You know, for me, a lot of times I'm still selling to an informed audience about financial services.
Mm-hmm.
They may not be fully informed, but they're pretty well informed.
Right.
Just through different groups. But technology is a total different thing.
The exact opposite.
Yeah, I'd like some feedback from you. We frequently encourage our folks, it's like, we're going to start out with the least possible solution
Yes.
and then work our way up.
Yes.
Any problems with that in your
Not at all. I mean, I've walked into some pretty large companies that, they have this huge accounting system, and I'm asking them, okay, well, why do you really need this? Oh, well, it has this CRM, it has this, it has all. Are you using all that? No, but we'll use it. We're planning on using it next year.
Do you have
And
anybody
next year
that
never
knows how to use
comes.
it?
Yeah, no, exactly. And there, it's not 10% of every application. That's the most utilization you're going to get of most applications, because there is so much depth to every single application. People are just scratching the surface. I mean, who has time to learn all these applications and what you can do with everything? So I am definitely on board with keep it simple. Let's start with just one application and grow from there. If we can't leverage this and spend the time to completely know it 100% backwards forwards, you can be so much more productive if you learn everything about that application. Spend a year on an application, because I've seen people rolling out 3 and 4 applications in a quarter.
Oh my gosh,
And
you can't digest that meat.
Whose employees can keep up with all that?
No.
They can't. They're just doing the minimum to get by, and you're not going to get the depth of information out of there
Because
that
even
you
if they're
really
in
want.
training for 2 solid days,
Yeah,
by the end of day 1, they're already thinking about the work they're not doing.
that's right.
And they're no
right.
longer focused on the
Yeah.
training. Or at least too often I think that's going on.
Yeah.
One thing that I'll throw out there is, that old adage of fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
I think it works really good, this deal of fight technology knowledge with technology knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Right.
So if you're thinking about buying, one thing that I would always encourage, which is, why I love you, I don't need to be the expert.
Right.
I know experts that can come in and filter the possible BS that's being sold to me by somebody that has infinitely better knowledge than I do.
Right. Right.
So how often are you engaged to come in to be the technology fire, to go fight the technology fire when people are doing systems reviews?
A lot.
Good.
And a lot more recently. I think the more due diligence projects we take on with some of our clients is, gets us into more of a fractional CTO position or CIO position with these companies in their portfolio companies, and we go and take a look under the hood and we see the same things happening. So, I don't want to blame anybody, or things happen because they happen. It just is. But you need somebody looking at that from a technical perspective and questioning your own technical resources internally. It's always good, and I welcome people to question us too. We've had plenty of cybersecurity companies come in and evaluate us, and we always get top marks. And what's interesting about those is we're sparring back and forth and go, well, no, this should be configured that way, and ultimately it's a good feedback session. And you should be very concerned about the person who is skeptical of bringing an outside source in. And I know no one wants to be looked at. They don't want their work checked or evaluated or critiqued, especially a lot of IT people. But at the same time, it is very helpful to have another person looking at it. So.
Well, your business is probably a lot like ours. So let me expand on that.
Yeah, sure.
We really serve people from like 2 million to 75, maybe 100 million.
Yeah.
And the premise is gosh, you, in that range, you're not big enough to need a full-time CFO. At the lower range, a full-time CFO may demand a compensation that's more than the person that owns the company.
Mm-hmm.
So you may not have enough CFO work. You may not be able to afford a CFO in that kind of bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's rare that I'm going into a company that already has a CFO or a qualified CFO. They may have a great controller. There's a huge difference between controller and CFO.
Yeah.
Do you kind of run into the same thing on your side between going into companies and for a certain size or range, they don't have enough critical mass to afford a full-time technology guru inside their own deal?
Right.
Is that true for you?
That is true. Yeah, I see that happening a lot. We do walk into plenty of situations where they have the IT guy or they have a cousin who's good with technology and hey, we brought him in to take a look at stuff. But you don't have anyone just questioning the strategy. And, in economic downturns and things like that, people always look to cut the IT budget. They just do. It's natural. This happens a lot, but they end up cutting in the wrong places, and I don't want to go down that rabbit trail. But
you've seen it a lot.
Yeah, I see it a lot. It's really just kind of a matter of going back to the basics and just focusing on what needs to be taken care of.
So I was really kind of going with that is helping our audience here understand that, if your company's below 80 million, it's worth bringing in an outside expert who says, you know what, let's really fight this technology fire with technology fire. Because while you may have somebody that like and trust, they still may not have the broad base of skills that the outsider. So, especially in today's age, the ROI on this has to be through the roof because even a modest system, it's going to cost you $60,000 a year in licensing fees because everybody's going to an annual licensing subscription.
Yeah.
It's no longer that I paid for it once and got it installed. No, I'm going to be paying user fees, subscription fees.
That's right.
Forever. And the low end of that's $50,000.
Yeah.
It could be $250,000.
Yeah, and that gets out of control fast.
Oh yeah.
Especially when you hire somebody who brought in this application, like I mentioned earlier, they leave and they're still paying for this application nobody's using anymore. So, those are the kind of things you just need to kind of oversee or have someone, even pulling somebody in, once a year, to kind of say, hey, let's look at this, let's fix this, let's clean this up. Why are you doing this? Asking all of those right technical questions.
Yeah.
So, you fighting fire with fire is, absolutely, I agree with that. And, it comes back to technical knowledge. It comes back to, someone who's been in that CIO position, as opposed to, going back to your cousin who does the IT support.
I always like to turn that analogy around. So let me give you an example. We had this one client, and they were a $10 million a year client.
Mm-hmm.
And they were paying upwards of $400,000 a year for their system.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh,
wow.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's a lot.
And it was a professional services deal. This isn't unique manufacturing. We're not doing huge complex bombs and a massive, and it's like, whoa, this is not meant to be that hard.
Right.
Most companies like you are running off QuickBooks.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting when we peeled it back, and there's lots of rationalization about how they got there, right?
Sure.
Because we are human.
Yes.
And so what I asked is like, okay, I know you love this one module over here on your CRM deal, and you bought this other one because, gosh, it talks to the CRM.
Mm-hmm.
I said, so if you're paying another $200,000 for this piece over here in addition to the CRM, let's put that in terms of your revenue. Is relative to your margins, you need to create almost $1 million worth of additional revenues to pay for this. Is this system allowing you to gain another $1 million worth of revenues to pay for it?
Right.
I kind of exaggerated there. It was more like 700,000, but it was still a big number.
Yeah, sure.
It's like, no. The system didn't enable me to get another $700,000 worth of revenue. It's like, that's effectively what it's costing you.
Yeah, exactly.
To pay for that system over your bicycle versus the Rolls Royce.
Exactly.
You need to bring in $700,000 worth of revenue to pay for this nut.
That's right.
And boy, did those eyes get big.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's always a great way. I always try and reposition things, not in the costs, but in the revenue. What's
Yes.
the revenue needed to pay for that decision
Right.
there?
No, that's a very good approach.
Well, and you take
Like
that back to the salesperson, like, hey, as long as you can deliver $700,000 more, I'm good.
Yeah, for sure.
And hopefully twice that, because that's just my break-even point.
Right. Yeah, of course.
And people kind of back up for the table.
Mm-hmm.
But what other topics do you have? I know that I've probably overconsumed your time, so I want to be respectful.
No, not at all. No, I always enjoy these conversations, and I appreciate you having me. Inviting me to this. It's
Well, it's basically
I
the
love
same
doing
conversations we have over lunch. We
exactly,
just
but
press
we're just on video, right?
Right.
So maybe you need to start recording our lunches. I don't know.
Oh, I'm not a very clean eater. I get stuff on my shirt.
We got the
I
after
see
lunch
that.
in. All right, but no, it's. I mean, again, going back to, I think we've hit all the points that I lead into, and my cybersecurity classes and training and things like that. I do computer training, consulting classes, and it all kind of comes back to, why do you need this?
Very
Why
nice.
are you spending this much money? You can have a tighter budget and still be productive, secure, and scalable. You don't have to have all these expensive
Bells and whistles.
pieces of hardware out there just because you read about it in Computer Magazine this week, or whatever. So,
I've never read Computer Magazine, but I'll trust that you.
but you have IT people just making decisions based off of what they've read.
Yeah,
This is what we
I
need
just want to be clear to our audience.
Yeah, no, that's
not
right.
me.
Yeah, and that, but that happens, and we're human, and if more CEOs and CFOs really lean into their IT people, and just have a conversation and say, well, why are we getting this? What's the end goal here? And then
Right.
also, I like your question about the revenue. How are we gonna make money here, or how are we gonna pay for this by making more money?
Right.
How is this going to save? And you can get down to the analytics of, this is going to save this person 30 minutes a day. This is going to save this person an hour a day. And you can...
But if I'm not getting rid of the person, I didn't change my cost.
Well, no, true, but you can consolidate some things and kind of see where,
that's
okay, here's some
good point,
opportunities
good point.
to consolidate, positions and
Maybe I don't have to hire any
reduce some
people as fast.
admin. And kind of like the workflow stuff we were talking about, you can just reduce a lot of manual stuff and just start automating. There's so many automation tools out there where you
Very
can
nice.
just start reducing things and make people's lives easier so they can focus on, taking a breath before they click on that email.
Very nice. Well, with that, I hope you all have enjoyed this conversation with Clark Sandlin at Zyrka. I know that I have. And, if you're that company that's $80 million and down, and you have some big IT decisions to make, or you really want to revamp how well that's all working, I highly encourage you to call Clark. He's a great dude, and clearly a very direct communicator.
Yes.
Entertaining, but, no BS. And he'll tell you, nope, you're fine. You don't have too many meds, or yep, you got too many meds. We need to remove some. But
Yeah.
Clark, thanks a lot for coming out and visiting with me on this Friday, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh,
You too.
my pleasure, man.
All right.